Campagnolo has launched a brand new dedicated gravel group set. It's called Ekar and it's significant for multiple reasons. And before I tell you anything else about it, big shout out to our kit sponsor Freewheel, check the link in the description. So it's 13 speed, not 11, not 12, but 13. Also, it achieves its ratios using a tiny 9-tooth cog on the cassette. And of course, this is a huge step for Campagnolo because the brand has been essentially road only for decades now. They previously dabbled in mountain bike stuff in the late 80s and early 90s, but since then it's been road all the way. So this is a real statement of intent from Campag. Incidentally, for our global viewers, in the UK, we quite often abbreviate Campagnolo to Campag. I'm aware that in much of the rest of the world, you tend to abbreviate it to Campy. If I use the terms interchangeably, I apologise. Ekar is named for the Cima Ekar, which according to Campagnolo is a gravel heaven that's no more than an hour's ride from their HQ in Italy. In creating Ekar, Campagnolo apparently consulted 4,500 riders and interested parties and determined that there were some key attributes in a gravel group set that people were looking for. These were durability, braking, chain security, sufficient gear range, and finally the ability to run one by. The group set Campagnolo has come up with is one by only, and in price terms it's designed to slot in below Chorus 12 speed but above Centaur 11 speed. That means that in the UK, a complete group set will retail at £1,449. That's including everything, brake rotors and all, but as ever, that's a retail price, and retail prices aren't always that meaningful for components. What you actually pay in the real world may be completely different. Right, so those are the key points about Ekar. Let's talk through some of the individual components and what makes them interesting. The star of the show, I guess arguably, is that 13-speed cassette. It starts with a tiny 9-tooth cog. That might not sound very important, but that is kind of exceptional. SRAM on its gravel group sets gives you a 10-tooth, which was always regarded as very, very small, and Shimano at the moment is still sticking with 11-tooth cogs, although if they go to 12-speed, it's very likely that will change. The advantage of going to the 9-tooth is it's a way to expand the range. The downside is that smaller cogs tend to have higher mechanical losses, but there's always a balance there. And it might be that for the type of riding this group set's intended for, that's not the primary concern. Campagnolo is offering 9 to 36 tooth, 9 to 42 tooth, and 10 to 44 tooth cassettes. This one here is a 9 to 42 and it's claimed to weigh 390 grams. And it achieves that weight with a combination of larger aluminium sprockets and smaller steel ones for durability. The cassette fits on the new N3W driver that Campagnolo released earlier this year. The nice thing about that driver is that if you buy a set of wheels with it, like the ones on this bike, they are backwards compatible with Campagnolo 11 and 12-speed cassettes as well. The classic downside of one-by drivetrains is that there's always a trade-off between range and the size of the jumps between the gears. Campagnolo reckons that with 13 gears and that tiny 9-tooth cog, you've got both sufficient range and the ability to keep your cadence as constant as possible while you're riding. The new cassette is accompanied by a matching brand new 13-speed chain, and it is pushed around by a brand new rear derailleur, which, as you would hope for a gravel-specific group set, is clutched for better chain management. According to Campagnolo, that derailleur weighs 275 grams, incidentally. The Ekar group set gets a dedicated 1x crank that comes with 38, 42 and 44 tooth chainring options. The crank spider is a 4-arm design, just like the ones on Campagnolo's current road group sets, while the chain rings use a narrow wide teeth profile to keep the chain in place. The crank arms are carbon, while the spindle is steel, and it's a 2-piece design with a hearth joint in the middle, like the Ultra Torque system that Campagnolo's been using for years. The crank weighs a claimed 615 grams, that's with the 38 tooth ring that I've got here and 172.5mm crank arms. It's matched to a new Pro-Tech, as Campag calls it, bottom bracket, which is compatible across every standard pretty much, whether that's threaded or press fit. The levers are often the defining component of a group set because they're the part that you interact with most directly. If you're used to Campagnolo's mechanical shifters, Ekar's shifters are going to feel very, very familiar. They use the same fundamental approach where upshifting and downshifting are quite separate actions with separate levers. There's a lever behind the brake which you sweep inwards for easier gears, i.e. downshifts, and there's a thumb paddle which you push down for harder gears, i.e. upshifts. The key difference with Ekar is that the thumb shifter has been redesigned. It's actually got two different places you can put your thumb, and that means really easy shifting whether you're on the hoods or on the drops. The reach on the levers is adjustable, and there's some nice texturing on the downshift paddle for a little bit of extra grip. Of course, a key difference from Campagnolo road group sets is that with Ekar, you've only got shifting levers on the right-hand lever. The left is simply a brake lever because it's a 1x group set. The Ekar brakes use the same internals as Campagnolo's road disc group sets. They were developed in collaboration with Magura. The main difference is that Ekar gets a harder wearing pad compound for off-road riding, but the rotor sizes are the same. You get 140 and 160mm options. I've only had the briefest time with Ekar so far, but my overriding impression is that if you are used to and like Campagnolo's road shifting, it's going to feel really, really familiar. It's got a very similar mechanical feel, both in the way that the chain moves back and forth and the spring feedback from the shifters themselves. The extra extension on the paddle shifter that you operate with your thumb does seem to be really effective. You can easily operate it from the drops as well as on top of the hoods, which was not always the case with some of Campagnolo's group sets. They've used a few different designs over the years with varying levels of success. When I've had a chance to ride Ekar properly over some real distance, I will give you a full review on BikeRadar.com. We'll stick a link in the description when that's been published. Anyway, it certainly seems that Campagnolo has gone all in on gravel. Along with the Ekar group set, the brand's launching kit and luggage for bike packing. They're really buying into the hot new trend that is gravel. It's going to be really interesting to see how Ekar performs, and also whether we get more gravel components from the brand at different group set levels. Campagnolo has such a storied history on the road, but off-road, it hasn't really done anything for such a long time that this really is new territory for the company. Campagnolo has told us that we're going to be seeing bikes built with Ekar from important brands such as Specialized and 3T, suggesting that they really are trying to take on SRAM and Shimano in the gravel market. The big question is, can they do that? Can Campagnolo compete with GRX and SRAM's eTap group sets? But what do you think? Can 13 gears at the back and a 9-tooth cog really differentiate Campagnolo from the competition and make them a viable choice for gravel? Do you want Campagnolo components on your bike? Are you going to choose them over the major players in the gravel world? Do let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please, please hit that little bell icon so you get notified every time we publish a video.